Hello everybody, my name is Dylan and welcome to another Educational Bytes Implementation short. Today we will be working on classes and constructors, so we will walk through a small program in which we have to go ahead and just complete the class definition. So, our prompt here is pretty straightforward. Essentially we're given Maine, we're given most of the food item, class declaration, and implementation, and we just have to go ahead and write some constructors. So we can look through this if we want to, but this stuff is not too terribly important, just shows us some sample input and output. And what we want to do is just go ahead and start in the header file and make our constructor declarations. So this stuff is pretty straightforward. We just want to go ahead and say, hey, if there is a CPP file which includes this header file, then we want to go ahead and make sure it knows to look for the food item default constructor, like so, right? Not too complicated. So we have the semicolon afterwards because it's just a function prototype. So it's just a declaration there. And then here, same deal, except we want to just go ahead and include the parameters that we might be using for this constructor. So this is the first time we're working with parameterized constructors, so there's just a few notational notes I want to hit on before we actually go to the definitions. So you may have seen this kind of notation before where we're allowed to just specify the data type within the declaration of a function without actually giving the parameter an identifier, right? So this is common practice in some places, but if you want to be extra explicit, you can go ahead and include the full name. And to be most clear, you'd probably want to correspond the names of the parameters with the names of the data members that you're assigning those with. And another thing that I've seen people do is they just use a shortened version of the private data members' names in the food item or in any parameterized constructors prototype. So something like, so if we have our string name, we would put like string n or double F, double C, double P, and this kind of works out with the just single initial because we don't have any of our data members identifiers overlapping that way. But I will just go ahead and include the full identifiers. Just sometimes we want the header files to be nice and concise, and this can cause it to get a little bit crowded, for lack of a better term. Cool. So that's kind of all there is to do here in the header file. If we want to look at the rest of our stuff, we see that we have our accessors here, all of these get functions, and then we have a print function. Notice that we don't have any mutators. It's not exactly common, but it's fine. We're just kind of thinking about constructors today. So let's work our way over to the CPP implementation file. Now recall when we're working with implementation files that are pulling from a header, we want to go ahead and first include the header file so it knows where to look for these things, and then we have to use the scope resolution operator in conjunction with the class name in order to define it. So all of these accessors are already defined, and so is the print function here. So we just want to go ahead and define our default constructor. So if we look at the lab file, we can see that the way it wants us to initialize data for the default constructor is to have 0 for all of the double items, and then water for the name. So we can go ahead and do that. So recall, since we're working with a class, that the constructor and any other functions for that matter will have inherent access to the private data members, so you don't need to like include them as a parameter or anything like that. So we can just make our definition as follows. And if we wanted to be extra explicit, we could use the this pointer, right? That doesn't hurt. But since there's no confusion with any parameters, we know that these identifiers refer to the private data members in our class as specified in the header file. So yeah, nothing too complicated here. We're just saying, okay, our name is water, and each of these double valued variables are going to be initialized to 0. And then the parameterized constructor is the new part for us. So let's go ahead and think about what we want to do for this. So here we can just kind of have the same exact header that was in the header file, same exact function prototype, except this time we're going to want to explicitly include the parameters that we want, or the identifiers for the parameters, right? So I just condensed it like this to save a little space. Honestly, you don't have to do this, especially if it fits on one line, which on my screen it looks like it would. But yeah. So then here we just want to go ahead and open up the constructor, and notice how for the parameters, the identifiers, I've used the exact same identifiers as are used for the private data members here. So we will have to explicitly include this pointer, and so then we will achieve that just like this, like we did in the last lab activity with classes and constructors. And this is just saying, hey, we're taking this instance of the class object and accessing its name data member and assigning it with the given parameter of string name, right? And we're doing that for all of our data members here, right? So this is kind of all there is to it, guys. This is just building off of our previous activity, so if you haven't already seen that video, please refer back to that. And yeah, if you'd like, we can take a look at Maine, but it's pretty straightforward. It's just saying, okay, if we have water as our item name, then we're using the default constructor, as you can see here. See, there's no arguments or anything like that. So if we were using parameterized constructor, we would go ahead and do something here. Let's actually go and find it like this, right? We're saying the food item is equal to an instance of the food item class initialized with these arguments. An alternative way of doing this, which would work the exact same way, is to just go ahead and remove the assignment altogether. And, ooh, that is ugly. And go ahead and declare it like this, with the arguments specified specifically or explicitly in the declaration of the instance of the food item class object. But yeah, guys, I hope this was helpful. If you'd like to know more about classes and objects, just go ahead and refer back to that previous lab exercise. Hope this was helpful. Have a great day.